And now I'd like to invite Professor Kyung, who is going to present a chapter, Science, Technology, and Innovation in Sustainable Development Corporations, Theories and Practices in South Korea. Professor Kyung is the Assistant Professor in the Graduate School of Science and Technology Policy at the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. So Dr. Park, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Kwon. Do you guys hear me well?
Yes.
Very good. I'm very excited to this book launch, and also I'm very happy to meet you all of the co-authors once again. And I don't know why I was thinking I have to prepare a 20 minutes presentation, but I will try to be very succinct and on time. So I kind of reorganized the slides. So maybe if I have more time, maybe I will explain the leftover presentations. So basically, my chapter broadly discussed about the roles of science and technology and innovation in the development sector. So maybe let me briefly share the background today and like 5 or 6 fundamental questions for my chapter. And key arguments and policy suggestions as well. So as you know, the theoretical and empirical relationship between the science and technology and economic growth is one of the main research agenda in economics and development studies. So the underlying assumption is that developing countries may be able to build upon the experiences from other countries to catch up and generate by sort of leapfrogging. So this was particularly true in Korea. So Korea's economic development has been considered, arguably considered STI, science and technology driven. So STI policies played a very fundamental role in socio-economic transformation and industrialization. My chapter particularly focuses on the perspective from development cooperation. So not necessarily highlight the roles of technology in a state's growth, but at the same time, this kind of historical understanding in South Korea is very relevant and important to understand the current STI-ODA policy and also national vision in South Korea. And another very important point of view is that integrating science and technology innovation aspects into the implementation of SDG, especially SDGs and sustainable development, still is a key challenges for both Korea, like advanced country, and also partner countries as well. So number 1 is a lack of clear vision, and also number 2 is that there is a lack of empirical understanding of how ICT contribute to achieving in national sustainable development. And finally, as a cross-cutting issue, because SDI is everywhere, so it's very difficult to investigate the real impact of STI-ODA initiatives. Because number 1 is there is a lack of standardization and international criteria for what is STI-driven ODA. And also, as a cross-cutting issues, as I just mentioned, STI is very much embedded in all development initiatives. So these are the main fundamental reasons for the difficulties in this area. So key questions for this chapter. Of course, the main question is what are the roles of STI in sustainable development, and also development cooperation between the countries. And more specifically, from this case of South Korea, I'd like to investigate first, which policy initiatives and practical acts can help both policymakers and also other stakeholders, can strengthen the collaboration between the ODA community and also research and innovation field and private sectors, including other stakeholders. And number 2 is that how can these 2 policy domain, in one hand the STI policy domain, and then the other one is ODA domain, and they have 2 different very different cultures. So how can these two different policy domains work together to leverage STI-driven ODA investments for the grand challenges, while leveraging science and technology investment for inclusive growth and sustainable development in partner country. And number three is that what are the risks and challenges of frontier technologies, especially emerging digital technologies in STI-related ODA. And finally, this is also very important. How do we monitor and evaluate implementations of STI-driven ODA activities? Because there's a lack of internationally agreed criteria, including the OECD CRS reporting scheme. So I have explored these very important questions and tried to critically investigate the current Korea's ODA policies, especially focusing on the STI-driven initiatives, and also the challenges and opportunities of bringing together these two different worlds, STI-driven ministries and ODA managing ministries in case of Korea, like Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Finance. As well as I'd like to also establish kind of international standard and measurement in this area, but it's kind of it's beyond this chapter. So I think it's a very important, one of the very important future research agenda or policy suggestion. So these are the the structures. And then more importantly, as Professor Kwon brother mentioned, I think that one of the beauty of our collaboration, from my understanding about this book, through the series of kind of paired structured chapters on a selected themes, I think we have achieved some sort of academic rigor to analyze and compare kind of development policies in two countries. So Professor Izumi Ono and Sayoko Uesu's chapter 7 on the partners engagement is very relevant to my chapter as well. And I greatly enjoyed reading this piece and learned a lot of new things from this chapter. So I think we have slightly different themes, and, but for the two chapters, I think it's a kind of great opportunity to explore the relatively untouched themes in the sector of international development cooperation. And chapter 7 also discussed about technology transfer and also the roles of technology assistance, and also discuss the importance of global value chain and from especially private sector's engagement perspective. So I was interested in the Japanese government's science and technology research project for the sustainable development, which was initiated in 2008, and which is also the international joint research program with the developing countries. I think this kind of case and policy initiative that we can also learn from Japan case to apply to the context of South Korea. And so I kind of restructured the slides, but briefly speaking, STI-related ODA in the context of South Korea is pretty much ICT-driven, which I also explained the main reasons for that. And there are key challenges in this area. Number one is, in spite of the recognition of the importance of STI and ICTs, there are still lack of understanding and how science and technology can contribute to the national development strategy, especially in recipient countries, and also for the developing cooperation. And also STI-driven ODA programs need sort of holistic approach, including financial resources and investment and technology governance, and include a lot of different type of stakeholders that can be applied to the STI initiatives in the project level, which is always embedded in the very complex and very dynamic local context in because the focus has been on how STI in sustainable development is actually not only require appropriate research or scientific or technology advancement or R&D strategies or infrastructure, but at the same time, it requires the capacity of individuals and local community, and also from donors' perspective, private sector's engagement as well. So these are the kind of that I try to emphasize the rather than technological deterministic view on this STI-ODA driven the field. We also need a kind of local embeddedness perspective in this sector as well. And also another one of the important challenges also includes that there is also fragmentation issues between the ministries. So this kind of the learning these kind of challenges in the case of Korea, I think implications for development policy may include the adapting STI for the localized actions and localized applications that meet the country's very specific socioeconomic conditions, as well as the the national level for the national development strategies. And secondly, sort of balancing the import of innovative solutions and innovative technologies and local development is very important. And also developing national STI roadmap for us. And from Japan is very needed in the context of Korea. So, okay. Still, do I have a time, right? Okay. So one of the biggest fundamental reasons for this kind of challenges is, as I mentioned, is there's kind of lack of standardization, and then pretty much wide gap and big confusions in measuring what is STI-driven ODA. So actually, according to the the OECD CRS reporting scheme, labs in the STI-related ODA, the CRS reporting codification. And also, as you can see, there are a lot of missing codes. It's quite detailed, but so that's why we need to fill this kind of gap between the sort of rhetoric level STI-ODA-driven initiatives and also kind of practical levels when we actually report what's the ICT-driven ODA and what's the STI-driven ODA. Actually, there's a huge gap between these two levels. So I think this is also related to the South Korea's mission to actively participate in the global shaping process of this kind of standardization, especially in OECD DA community as well. So, but there's also kind of progress in the context of Korea. There is institutional settings for the better integration between the STI side and the ODA side, especially national science and technology diplomacy strategy for innovative, inclusive, and inclusive state in 2017. And under this kind of vision, the related ministries began conversation for better coordination for the STI-driven ODA policy. And also, especially
maybe 30 seconds.
Sure. Okay. So there is institutional settings for the actualizing this kind of vision for integration, and then that's a kind of an institutional level and project level innovation. I'd like to introduce a CTS, Creative Technology Solutions, especially designed by driven by the KOICA, and then there is a lot of very interesting the project type of technology-driven projects in recipient country. So I think I already mentioned kind of key summary, and it's a cross-cutting issue. So that's why there's a lot of confusion, but at the same time we have a lot of opportunities for utilizing emerging technologies. So other statistical kind of findings, maybe I already included in my chapters, and then these are my kind of project when I was in the World Bank, and then when I'm currently working on. But maybe I can share. I can have some time for sharing this, the research for the next time. Thank you very much, Professor Kyung.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry about the pressing you have. I think we also leave something for readers to read the book from the book.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay. Well, next presentation will be